This is Salt's YouTube and we are discussing some hot topics, and I am joined by a long-time fave of the YouTube channel. Tibz is back.
Hi everybody.
Here she is. We're going to be tackling whether or not single people are, or feel like they are, less valued in the church than married people. Did you just stroke your
I did.
non-existent bitch?
This is it, exactly.
Do you think overall, taking a step back, big picture, that single people are less valued in the church than married people?
I think historically they can be, but I do think that the tide is changing. I think that churches are becoming more and more aware of the needs of single people. But definitely in the past, there has been quite like a disparity between the way that the life of a single person, particularly as they get older, is kind of seen and appreciated compared to those who are getting married and getting in relationships.
I do think that overall the awareness is far higher than it has been.
Definitely.
So even like 5 years ago.
I think the sort of pandemic did help people to kind of do a bit of a self-assessment, whether it's their church life or their home life or their communities.
Yeah.
I do think that single people also just started speaking up a bit more because we suddenly
got sassy.
We did. And we just suddenly realized like, hold on a second. Like my life is maybe wonderful or maybe it's really challenging, but I'm never seeing that talked about on the stage, or I'm never seeing people appreciate it, or I tried to bring it up and people are kind of dismissing it. What's that about?
Yeah.
And like if you go out sort of into the world and you're talking about it, people are staying single for longer.
Yeah.
People are, thriving, having amazing communities, amazing careers, and it's not seen as like a negative thing to be single in your 30s, 40s and 50s. And yet you come into the church and there's still these slightly archaic sort of ideas. And so I think that single people are starting to speak up a bit more and say, hold on a second.
Yeah.
Something's not quite right here.
We don't want to be second class here.
Exactly.
Yeah. But even so, I do think that there are certainly individuals, certainly, in some church congregations and things, that it's not like we're completely finished, right?
No,
There's
a
a bit more understanding to get. And there are definitely some people who feel that they are treated in a way that is secondary to married people.
Yeah. And I would say that the difference is that you have churches where they see that they need single people because they're like, well, single people are more likely to be available to volunteer for stuff, or people who are like, oh, I need some babysitters for my children. And so there's definitely this kind of idea of, we can use single people to serve the needs of our church. But then I think there is still a bit of a gap between, but how does the church serve the needs of single people? Because
almost like we want them for what they can do and not who they are.
Precisely.
Sometimes single people can tell others who are married or in a relationship the struggles that they're experiencing, and they're very much dismissed. You don't know what it's like for a marriage to be breaking down. You don't know what it's like to be woken up 6 times in the night. And the fact is, I don't. But perhaps you're disengaged from, you don't remember, or you never experienced some of the things that I found particularly challenging as a result of being single, right?
Yeah.
Do you feel people can be a bit dismissive of those things?
Absolutely. I was actually having a really interesting conversation in one of my last churches where we were in a staff team meeting and someone had approached one of the senior leaders. It was a gentleman who's single, in his maybe 40s, early 50s, and he was saying that he's really struggling to find community.
Okay.
And when he was sort of asked about it and said, are you any part of a small group? He was like, I'm part of 2 small groups. I am volunteering.
On different nights?
He was literally going to 2 different small groups and he's volunteering on like the sort of hospitality rota. And yet he was still really struggling to find connection. And the response of this leader was basically to say, I think this guy's kind of looking for, almost like a band of brothers, like, guys getting together and doing life together thing. No one has that. Even I don't have that. Like, he's looking for something that doesn't exist. And that broke my heart. Because I was like, if you can't find brotherhood and community in the church, then like where else are you going to find it? Like you should be able to find it in church, whether you're single or married.
I think I have that.
Right.
Not with, I guess, would be a band of sisters.
Yeah, sisterhood.
And also like I've got
mixed groups.
Mixed groups as well. But if I wanted to like assemble the girls, I would know who I was calling.
Exactly.
Right? Well, that kind of makes me feel a bit sad for both of them.
Exactly. And I suddenly realised. So
yeah.
So this senior leader married with children.
I do think so when you get married, you have less time to foster and nurture those relationships.
But in what this guy was saying, he was making it clear that he would love something like that too. And so in the middle of him kind of dismissing
why couldn't they hang out together?
This is it, exactly. And then why is that not occurring to him, where it's like, well, why don't we start this band of brothers?
Yeah.
But then I think he kind of was seeing this other guy as being in a different stage of life. And so therefore...
All the better.
Exactly.
Okay, maybe I'm being a bit critical.
It's actually funny because that conversation ended up sparking a desire in me to kind of do a bit of an assessment. And then this friend of mine, Lauren Windle, shared about an organisation called the Single Friendly Church Network.
Yes!
And I was like, mate, this is perfect.
They are great.
They're amazing. And what they do is they basically help churches identify the things they're already doing that are great and single friendly, and then things that they could maybe be doing a little bit better, and just giving a bit of language around. So I ended up with my current church. I sat down and we ended up going through this audit. It took us 6 to 8 months. That's a lie. It took me 6 to 8 months because I'm really bad with all things admin and forms. But I did it, and it's prompted all these incredible conversations where we suddenly realised everyone's lonely. Like if you're single, if you're married, if you've got kids, everyone's kind of struggling with that deeper connection. Yes, we have small groups, but like actually, are your small groups eating together? Can you call up someone in your small group and be like, hey, I'm moving house. Could you help me with some boxes? Hey, I'm really struggling with my taxes this year. Do you want to do like a tax party where we just both sit and do our like self-assessments or something? Even small things like that. Is that happening so much? And we realize, oh, maybe it's not. And beyond that, is there kind of events where we're showing single people in families. I mean, you know, they talk about how early mothers are most likely to feel most isolated, right? When you're a young mum with like an infant. And so are we doing things that helps people say, look, we know this is a struggle. We know that you might not be the first person to speak up about it, but we're just going to be there for you and support you. And know, like, if you ever need to reach out, we'll be there. So
so good. If somebody was in church leadership or really plugged in at their church and wanted to start that conversation with leadership, what do we think are like some really good tips for ways that a church can show that value to the single people in it?
The first thing to do is to listen as a church leader, because like you said, oftentimes our first instinct is to respond with a solution or sometimes a bit of a dismissal. And this actually applies to just any time someone is coming to you with I'm struggling with this thing, I've gone through this thing that's hurting me. Actually, if you just listen and start and just say, okay, I'm hearing you, I want to have this conversation because I want to know how we can be doing better. That's the first thing. I also think representation on not just like the church leadership, but actually who's preaching as well and speaking. If all of your church leaders are married, maybe bring some guest speakers in who are single. They don't even necessarily need to talk about singleness.
Yeah, that's true. But our single people have got opinions beyond our relationship status.
Amen.
So my overall experience as a single person in church has been really wonderful, and I've met lots of wonderful and understanding people. But there has occasionally been times when you're living your life and doing lots of varied things with your life, and then you realise that actually still for many others, your status as a single person not in a relationship is one of the biggest factors about you. I remember one of the first times I got asked to speak at a particular church I'd been attending for a while. I was really excited when they asked me, only to find out that actually they were doing a series on singleness and dating, and so they wanted me to give the singles perspective because I was pretty much the only person that they could think of, even though we were in quite a big church, to be able to speak into that issue. And more specifically, they wanted me to speak on how I find joy and peace in my single life. And so what ended up happening was it spurred a really good conversation with that church leader where I said, well, first of all, I might not be perfectly at peace and okay with my status as a single person. And so to speak into how can you find peace as a single person, I might not have the tools and the vocabulary yet to do that. But also I have lots of other things that I could offer and share in things like preaching and sermons. And I'd love to discuss those with you if you'd like to. So that was a time when I felt like I was able to shift the perspective from, oh, she's Tibz the single person, to, oh, she's Tibz who's a multifaceted individual with lots of interesting and wonderful things to bring to the table.
People can deliver authoritatively on the word of God, regardless of their relationship status. Exactly. So I think even just seeing that on the stage really helps single people to know, like, okay, there's no barriers to leadership or to speaking based on relationship status. And then beyond that, I think there's some really great literature out there. I've read this book called Notes on Love by someone who has a really keen... Oh, here we go. It's coming. Wow.
Oh my gosh, it's not this book,
what?
Is it?
Oh, I think that might be it. Have you seen this book? But I love that things like your book are helping people give language to the things that they may have felt for a long time, but not felt justified to be able to share. And I think that by reading it and by having the conversations that we've had, it's actually really enabled me to have conversations with other people who've been like, wait, you've been going through that too? You've been feeling that way too? Me too. And actually, it's not okay. And yes, there are worse things in the world, but also... if we're supposed to be a church that has a space for everyone, where everyone can find community and growth and discipleship, and actually if we're a church that came out of an early church that was founded on people who were single, like Paul, like, you know, Jesus, then like, how is it that the tide has suddenly shifted and now so many of our leaders are just coming from a perspective where they're married? Actually, oftentimes they did get married in their 20s or 30s, and so actually they don't have the experience of decades of being single, of waiting on God, of that being maybe a really significant struggle, or maybe even it being not a big struggle, and then you get annoyed with people always being like, how's the hunt for a spouse going? And you're there like, what? Is that what I'm supposed to be doing with my time? So thanks for your book, and there's loads of other literature as well that are helping people. So.
What do you think about, I was thinking about this earlier today actually, August in church.
Sorry, let me just readjust real quick. Okay.
So maybe
AKA the big church shutdown.
Maybe people watching their churches don't do this, but the vast majority, if not all the churches I've been to, have scaled back to like a skeleton staff, have maybe had members of the congregation preaching, maybe rolled back on everything, because the assumption is that your kids, it's school holidays,
everyone's gone.
And no one's really around. So I'm always around.
Exactly. I would say probably in my current church, things are quieter in the summer because we're in quite a suburban area. There's not a university nearby. But actually it is a lot of young families, and so you do have a lot of people leaving, so there's some reality to it. But
is it chicken and egg? Because if you were still running, people would make the effort to still come.
Exactly.
Whereas people are like, maybe I'll take August off because you're not that invested, so I just won't come for a month.
So that's where conversations and listening helps. Actually know your congregation, know who's around, know that, okay, if we did just maybe more socials in the summer, just make the space and then see who fills it.
If somebody's watching this and they're like, I'm a single person, that's all well and good, my church isn't doing that and I'm just not feeling valued, what is it? Is it like find a different church? Do they need to step up a bit? Do they need to have a word with leadership? Like maybe consider all three? Like what are we thinking?
That's such a good observation. I've really wrestled with this because I don't know if you can tell, I'm an extrovert. So I know, shock, horror, what could that mean? And so because of that, I'm very much a go-getter. I'm very much the initiator. I make social events happen.
Some people find that so hard though.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And part of that conversation that I was having before with this other church leader, where he was sort of saying, like, if you want a band of brothers, just go find a band of brothers, like just, you know, make it happen. That part of the heartbreak was I was like, there's so many people that's a real struggle for. And actually in that conversation, they brought me into it because they were like, just do what Tibz does. Tibz is always organising socials and things. And I'm like, because I'm the most raging extrovert you've ever met in your life.
I would say though, I don't think you need to be the raging extrovert to do it. I think lots of people can feel like they're not getting invitations. And my challenge to that person is, how many have you issued?
True. I think it has to be a meeting in the middle. I think there is a lot of onus on congregants, us as individuals, to be willing to have those conversations with a leader, even if it feels a bit difficult, even if they might initially dismiss us. Maybe take someone with you, or who, you know, has read the book Notes on Love and has a little bit of the lingo on how to have those conversations. But then also church leaders need to be willing to listen, to maybe, you know, reassess some of the way that they do things. And then I think when there's that meeting in the middle, it can be a really beautiful thing. And so I would say, if you're single and you're seeing your church isn't doing that, and also if you see there's a need as well. If you're in a very small church where you're the only single person and really maybe you're just trying to get other single people to come join, which I'm not saying, I have been guilty of that, don't. Anyway, but if you're in a church where you see there are a lot of other people who are in a similar boat to you, then actually you can be that spokesperson. You can be that person who takes that brave first step and says, actually guys, let's talk about this, because I think there is quite a significant minority here. And then hopefully if you're in a good church that realises it's not just about serving the needs of the church but serving the needs of its people, then they'll be willing to listen to that. That's the hope.
I love that. Thanks so much for tuning in with us. Like and subscribe to the SALT YouTube channel for more hot topic conversations.